here on Wish TV. She was just 24 years old. She had been with the department for 2.5 years. She worked out of the East District. She's a graduate of Southport High School, also a member of the Army National Guard. We're also told her father is a deputy sheriff and her mother a control operator here in Marion County. IMPD Chief Randall Taylor said yesterday that Leath is the exact type of officer that you want serving in your department. Flags now flying at half staff across central Indiana. Suspect has been arrested, 27-year-old Elia Dorsey, facing preliminary charges of murder and attempted murder. Now, as far as the procession route goes, which you're looking at on the left side of your screen, started at the Marion County Coroner's Office, will head west on McCarty Street. It will then head east to Illinois, then north to 38th Street, then west to Crown Hill Cemetery. And we'll begin our live coverage, though, at McCarty Street, just a little while away from what you're seeing here on the left side of your screen. Our Jenny Drasler on top of it for us there right now. Jenny, what do you see? What do you know?
Good afternoon, Phil, and I am at the corner of McCarty and Illinois, where you can see, just approaching this intersection now, you have the IMPD motorcycle team, the units. That's the beginning, this procession. Just rounding the corner of Illinois and McCarty, very beginning of this procession here. Yesterday, we saw a totally different scene. It was a cold, rainy day, but today, beautiful sunny day. A lot different than what we would have normally been seeing. Streets would normally be lined, but right now empty streets. There are a few people out here paying their respects, working at the nearby businesses. But we see the procession about a block away from us now, Phil.
Yeah.
I'm just going to let this breathe for a second. You guys can just watch this.
Sure, always an emotional moment when you see her fellow officers, their fellow officers, honoring them. She, of course, the 62nd police officer to die in the line of duty that served for IMPD. This all happening yesterday afternoon. Jenny, you were out at the scene. Tell us what happened there yesterday, if you can.
Well, yesterday, Phil, it was somber. I showed up and you knew that something was wrong. I've been to scenes like yesterday's time and time again, but something was different yesterday. It was somber. It was a situation that when I showed up, the IMPD officers on scene, tears. Not a lot of people out yesterday, but it was a situation that Phil, nobody wanted to see. You just see them here rounding the corner. We have multiple K-9 units in this procession. Hundreds, Phil, I can stress to you, hundreds. You're taking a look now. This is down McCarty Street looking west. Hundreds of IMPD cars in this procession for Officer Breann Leath, who responded to a domestic violence call yesterday on the east side at an apartment complex near North Franklin Road off 21st Street. And as you said a little bit ago, Phil, this was an officer who was doing her job, hailed by city leaders for being brave. She was the type of person that you wanted on your police force. And Phil, this is exactly why. This is what we're seeing, and this is such a very different scene than what we would normally be seeing. These streets would be lined, but of course, with COVID-19, people can't come out.
Sure.
We do have a few people on the side here showing their respects, but Phil, this is powerful.
No doubt about that. Now, the procession route.
We have them rounding.
Yeah, it started where you are, actually not too far from where you are at the Marion County Coroner's Office. It's going to head west on McCarty Street, as you mentioned, then east onto Illinois, and then north to 38th Street, and then west to Crown Hill Cemetery. Have you had a chance, Jenny, to talk with any of your sources, anybody with IMPD, in regards to what the next few days will be like, and any plans for a funeral?
No set plans. I have been reaching out to my sources inside IMPD, and this was something that IMPD immediately, they have been working on this investigation. We knew that from yesterday. They told me in the next 24 to 48 hours we would get answers. We saw those answers less than 12 hours later with an arrest in this. But as far as funeral plans go today, what we're expecting, they'll go straight to the funeral home, and no set plans yet, Phil, because this is something that we have never seen before. There has never been a situation like this,
right,
where there's a pandemic, where you can't have the response that she deserved, the public display of affection that Officer Breann Leath deserved, and you can't have that. So this is something that we've never seen before. The officers that I have talked to, texted, called, they say that this is something just that they don't know. It's unprecedented. So they're just showing the love that they can in the best way that they know they can in the times that we're dealing with.
About 24 hours ago that she lost her life when she and two other officers tried to enter that apartment on the east side of Indianapolis. And by all reports, it happened pretty quickly. They were knocking on the door, and the suspect fired through that door. She leaves behind a small child.
It did.
She's a veteran. Just heartbreaking 24 hours for her family, the IMPD community, really the entire city.
It is, Phil, and this is a very deliberate move, the path that they're taking here. This is a 7.5 mile trek through the city, through downtown Indianapolis, on a stark contrast day, Phil, from what we saw yesterday. Again, rainy, cold. Today it's bright, it's sunny, and this is to show as much love and as much respect for her as we can. And this is just something that yesterday, it was a very quick situation, showed up at 2:46 p.m. So about 24 hours ago, when she responded to that domestic dispute, 24 hours later, and here we are with, Phil, just hundreds of IMPD squad cars. We had canine units, all led by the front procession, led by the motorcycles. They right now, Phil, have crossed the end of the procession. Here is behind us. Illinois and McCarty getting ready to open back up. Again, they'll be going the 7-mile trek to the cemetery. They'll be passing by Wish TV here momentarily. Outside Illinois, as you can see, opening back up now where we're at, Phil.
Have we learned anything about this suspect, 27-year-old Eli Dorsey? Does he have any priors? Do we know what happened inside that apartment that led up to this?
As far as when I talked to IMPD officials today, that's something that they're still investigating. Our Richard Essex, he was looking into that background portion of it. But this is somebody that I can tell you, IMPD is going to be working night and day around the clock trying to figure out exactly what caused this. The big question here that I heard yesterday and again this morning was why. What set this person off inside of that apartment to do something like this?
Yeah.
Still no word yet on his priors. That's something that our reporters today, Phil, we are going to be working night and day trying to figure that out as well.
It seemed like it was kind of an emotional moment too yesterday afternoon when you were doing your reporting. I know you had mentioned off camera that there was a young man. Have we found out anything about him? Was he a family friend, a family member who was in tears? Just to kind of give us an idea of what that scene was like, if you can.
I found out that he was a little boy who had lived at that apartment complex. I found that out afterwards, and that's what this just goes to show, is this is so powerful that this affects everybody. And if a little boy, I'm guessing yesterday, was probably 6-7 years old, just to be overcome by this, and for him to even have to know what this is, Phil, and what happened here, that is sad. And I think that that's what we've talked about before all of this happened in Indianapolis. This is a city that is aching, Phil. This is a city that is hurting. And this is something that we did not need yesterday. Nobody wanted this. On top of everything that's going on across the country, across the world right now, this is not something that Indianapolis needed.
Yeah, for the most part, our city honors our police officers. We understand that our police officers are the ones to keep the peace, the people who run towards the danger, as Breann Leath did yesterday. as Mayor Joe Hogsett mentioned at the press conference, that knew what the dangers were, knew that she could be putting herself in harm's way, and still went to that scene. And that's what these officers do on a daily basis. That's why when she unfortunately lost her life yesterday, she died as a hero. Jenny, thank you very much. This is a shot from our downtown camera right now, just to give you an idea of where this procession is going. Again, the procession route started at the Marion County Coroner's Office on West Bacardi. It went east to Illinois and then north to 38th Street. It will then arrive at Crown Hill Cemetery here momentarily. Our Richard Essex is also working this story, as you heard Jenny say. He's working on the background of this suspect right now, and I believe he's also on the procession route as well. Richard, can you hear me?
All right, I'm here. Yes. Yes, Phil.
What are you seeing out there right now? Where are you, first of all?
Well, we are seeing an awful lot of police officers that are starting. We are at Crown Hill Cemetery,
okay,
and we're starting to see some police officers starting to gather around. We've seen some people from the neighborhood that are also starting to gather because of the quarantine, because of people who are supposed to be staying at home. There are just a few people that are starting to gather around the street.
Do we have a shot that we can see, Richard?
We understand that the person. Well, I guess so. Do we? We understand the procession is moving kind of slow. It's still in the downtown area. They are using the motorcycle patrol officers to stop traffic at all of the intersections, and they have to allow them to catch up as each one of these. But I heard you and Jenny talking a little while ago about Indianapolis doesn't need this. I was having a conversation with somebody from the FOP a little while ago, and this is just surreal. The Indianapolis that all of us have known and loved and grown up in, feels like a completely different town than it has been in just the past 2 years. You have people that are stuck in their houses for weeks at a time, and now you have this horrific crime out on the east side of Indianapolis. Yeah. A young officer who grew up as her father works for the Marion County Sheriff's Department. This is what she's wanted to do her entire life.
Richard,
and her career.
Sit tight. I hate to interrupt
so violently, so quickly yesterday.
I hate to interrupt you real quick. I want to go to David Williams, who's outside of our studio here at Wish TV on Illinois Street, because they are passing him as we speak. We'll get back to you momentarily here, Richard. Sit tight at Crown Hill Cemetery once they make their way there. David, outside we go, just outside of our studio here. What are you seeing?
Well, Phil, in just the last couple of seconds, we're seeing a few police officers on motorcycles. What you're seeing right now, I'm going to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. You see these officers on motorcycles going up Illinois, north on Illinois. We are between 19th and 20th on Illinois. You can see how slowly they are moving. As you said, they're heading north to Crown Hill Cemetery, where the body of Officer Leath will be for the time being. But I want you to look. You see these officers, how slow they're going. To us out here in the field, it feels like they are, of course, paying the ultimate respect for this officer who died in the line of duty. And as you have heard Jenny and Richard mention, you're not seeing people out here as you normally would because of this stay-at-home order. I want to pause and show you right down the street. You can see all of these police officers very slowly, very carefully, and lovingly moving her body ever so gently up Illinois Street. I'm going to let this image sit with you as you understand the gravity of what you are watching right now as we prepare for the officer to pass directly past us. Saw the hearse traveling very slowly up Illinois. That officer, she was in her early 20s, a mother, a veteran, a female police officer killed in the line of duty while she was at work. She will not be coming home today. Her child will have to find a way to live without their mother. You could see there are dozens upon dozens of IMPD police cars that are driving up Illinois. All of their lights are on to honor that fallen officer. And the few people that are out here have stopped everything they are doing to pay respect to this fallen officer. Pay attention to your screen. You're seeing all these lights, all these officers moving as one as they say goodbye to one of their own. And if you can, you probably can't see, but I'm watching the faces of every single officer that is driving by. Every single officer has a solemn, somber, and reverent look on their face, because they know what they are doing right now is to honor their officer who gave the absolute ultimate sacrifice. Again, look at your screen. This is something we have not seen in years in Indianapolis. Usually you would expect to see countless numbers of people on the streets. That is not the case today because of the stay-at-home order. But this is something you are going to remember for years to come. How IMPD has come together as one to say goodbye to that fallen officer.
It's a heartbreaking sight. It's also quite beautiful. And as you mentioned, the look on their faces, the officers in these vehicles, they understand, David. They understand the gravity of this situation. They understand that every single time they leave their homes, they put themselves at risk. They understand that she did the same, which is why they're paying their respects as they would with any one of them. She's a member of their family. Absolutely heartbreaking 24 hours for our city. David, I know that you were you covered the last officer that was gunned down a couple of years back. We were basically doing the same thing. And if you can describe what the situation, I know you kind of touched upon it with COVID-19, a much different scene. There were people that were lining the streets with flags in hand. It's almost
You're
surreal
right,
that nobody can
Absolutely.
be outside and honoring this officer.
It is, quite honestly, because when you come out here, you expect to see American flags, people standing at saluting the officers. But again, because of COVID-19, you're not seeing that. But what you are seeing right now, the last few cars are driving just past us on Illinois. And if you look down, kind of toward just past 21st Street, you could get a sense of how many police officers are in this procession. I had lost count after at least a couple dozen, but it's a sea of red and white lights. And Phil, to your question, this feels different than that last police officer death that I covered a couple of years ago, as you said, because there really are not any people out here as you would expect on a beautiful day like today. So one can imagine people are paying their respects on social media. I have read dozens and dozens of comments on social media of people pouring out their hearts, their respect, their sadness, their sorrow for this officer who died in the line of duty yesterday. I read a couple comments who said, we are praying for IMPD, we are praying for her and her family. You can see Illinois is back open right now.
Yeah.
But that procession has moved up north, more toward where our own Richard Essex is at the Crandall Cemetery. But Phil, here, even though there aren't many people out here, you can still feel in your heart of hearts the gravity and the solemn nature of how important and somber this moment truly is for our city, Phil.
All right, David, thank you very much. We'll talk with you later on in our newscasts. We're looking at a live picture now at 30th and Illinois, not too far away from where David was. They're, again, moving their way north to Crown Hill Cemetery. And if I can, I want to go back to Richard, if we can at least talk with him over these pictures, guys, in the control room. I cut you off a little earlier, Richard. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you, Phil.
Okay, let's go back to what you've been able to uncover about this suspect. Have you learned anything new?
Well, the suspect didn't seem to have much of a criminal record that we've been able to find so far. From what we have learned about his past is that he has either flown underneath the radar, or he has been stopped for what we can find a speeding ticket. So for whatever happened yesterday, of course, none of us were out there. None of us know, any of these people that were involved. But it certainly sounds like it was a very emotional time out there. I did talk to a fellow that lives right next door to that area today, and he said, the area is quiet. And yesterday, about 2:30, a number of police officers started showing up there, and there were about 12. They got all of their personal protective equipment on. They went inside, and of course, Officer Leath was one of the first ones inside. He said he heard a couple of gunshots, and then it was just chaos. And next thing he knows, there were police everywhere. There were paramedics everywhere. They brought her back out, put her in an ambulance, and she was taken down to Eskenazi, where we understand now that she was pronounced dead at Eskenazi Hospital. But out here at Crown Hill Cemetery, this is a very, very somber place, and you can. Every time you're out here, you're reminded of all of the people all the first responders that have fallen in the past, and. Typically, in a situation like this, you would see this entire road, 38th Street, everything around here would be lined with people. Today, there's virtually nobody out here because of the quarantine. And like I was saying earlier, it just feels like such a different time. First responders here in Indianapolis, all over the state, all over the country, have been exposed to this invisible virus that nobody, can seem to get their hands on, and then doing their job, going out and keeping all of us safe, keeping all of us protected. She's doing her job, and she is gunned down in this situation. Yeah. Now, I was talking to somebody from the FOP earlier, and her parents were making the arrangements for the funeral, and they're all in the personal protection equipment, and they're people with masks on and gloves, and it just breaks your heart, as a parent, to have to go through this, and then to have to go through it under these circumstances. You really have to feel for not just the police department, but for her parents, her children, her child, and everybody that knew her. It's going to be a very at arm's length service here in the next couple of days. And will you ever be able to really close the book on this relationship that she's had with so many people when you have to stay away? So that's going to be a big part. These are always very, very emotional. And then you add, the current situation to what we're going through here in Indiana, across the country. It's going to make things even harder for everybody here.
Sure. And you spoke with the FOP today. I would assume they're talking about this nonstop, right? They're trying to plan this thing out with the city and the state. It's probably, I would imagine, a pretty difficult thing to come up with a plan for a ceremony.
Well, we understand the procession's at 38th and Illinois, so they'll be coming around the corner here in just a few minutes. But the FOP, the police department, the city, they all have a plan in place for when situations like this happen. They hope they never have to use them, but Phil, you and I have been doing this for a long time, and we've been to way too many of these.
Yes.
And it's amazing to me every time we have a situation like this, how many people just step right up and they are just going through and making things happen, making sure that the family's cared for. And that's going to be a big part for FOP in the next couple of months, is making sure that her family's taken care of, that her children, her child is taken care of, making sure her father, who's still an active Marion County Sheriff's deputy, making sure everybody's protected or taken care of. Now, we should see the procession start to come around the corner here at 38th Street, coming into Crown Hill Cemetery in just a few minutes. It's only a half a mile or so from Illinois and 38th Street, and from what I've been able to hear is you have the motorcycle escort that is going to be bringing her around the corner, and then she'll come into the main cemetery office here, where there's a number of police officers here. Not as many as you would ordinarily expect, but because of the time, we're limited on who can be out here. And
sure.
And we do see, there's probably a good 20-25 officers that are standing over to our right by the chapel. And okay, so here we go. Here comes the first motorcycle escort, has just come off 38th Street and bringing Officer Leath back here to Crown Hill Funeral Home and Cemetery. It should just be a matter of seconds before the rest of the procession comes around. Having been to a number of, more than I would care to count, first responders that have died in the line of duty, these are very touching ceremonies, and this is just the first of several. Here we go. Here we've got the motorcycle escorts coming off of 38th Street. It should just be a matter of seconds before the vehicle that is carrying Officer Leath here to her final resting place should be coming around the corner at any second now. You can see the motorcycle escorts already have the black flags attached to their antennas. That's something you'll see. You've seen the flags all around Indianapolis and across the state have already been lowered to half-staff in her honor.
Yeah. The hearse will make its way past you and into the cemetery. What happens from there, Richard, once the body arrives at the cemetery?
Well, very much like you would for, and here we go. Here we have the hearse coming around the corner. She'll be taken inside the funeral home, and she'll be prepared for visitation and other services. But visitation in these times are just limited to a handful of people. So
yeah.
Here we go. Everybody's standing at attention, and us. We feel like we need to kind of also salute.
Okay, let's take it in for a second. Let's let it breathe. Let's listen. Emotional moment out there, Richard, as it always is. And as you mentioned, we've seen far too many of these. Just a couple of years ago, we lost Officer Jacob Pickett, Sheriff's Deputy Jacob Pickett, I should say. But this is the 62nd IMPD officer to lose their life in the line of duty here in the city of Indianapolis. Much different scene out there today than in years past because of the COVID-19.
And to complicate things with with the virus, everything's not in place. The arrangements are still being made. This is the first step to getting some of those arrangements in place, but the family and the department just haven't been able to get everything together quickly enough, or not everything has been announced just yet. So it's going to be some time before we find out exactly when the funeral will be. We can guess that it's going to be in the next couple of days by her being brought here, but it's going to be a much different service than we have seen in the past, and it's with all of these officers here, this could be the last time that a lot of them are really brought out here because of social distancing and people staying at home. Now, I'm certain that we will see departments from all over the state and all over the country coming here to honor her, but it will be everybody most likely staying in their cars for the entire service. We have read and heard of stories of people that have passed during this virus, and people haven't been allowed to be inside the funeral homes or inside the hospital, and this is no different. People they'll be limited to 10 people inside of the funeral home at any one time, and so it will be interesting to see how this is all going to work out.
No doubt about that. All right, Richard Essex, thank you very much. We'll see you at 5 o'clock with the latest on this. Again, Officer Leath's body arriving at Crown Hill Cemetery, where she eventually will. Some type of ceremony will take place. We're not sure exactly what that is yet. They're still working on that. We'll have much more on this coming up tonight at 5 and 6. All Indiana for you at 4 o'clock.
Time to enjoy home.